The first time I saw my own obituary, I thought it was some kind of sick joke. My photo, smiling in my Sunday hat, the one I wore to Marcus's graduation, was splashed across the screen. The headline read, "Evelyn Carter, beloved mother and nurse, passes peacefully at 68. My heart stopped right there in my living room. My teacup slipped from my hand and shattered against the tile floor. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe, because that was me, alive, standing right there, reading my own funeral notice. My name is Evelyn Carter, and I am 68 years old. I've spent most of my life taking care of other people, patients, neighbors, and especially my only son, Marcus. I thought after all that, someone would take care of me when I got old. But I was wrong. So very wrong. I'm a retired nurse from Atlanta, Georgia. I've got silver curls, aching knees, and a small house filled with memories of the man I loved and lost, my late husband, Harold. He was a construction foreman, steady, hardworking, gone too soon after a scaffolding collapse 25 years ago. It was just me and Marcus after that. And Lord, that boy was my world. But standing there, staring at that screen, it felt like my whole world had been turned inside out. The obituary said I'd passed away peacefully in my sleep, surrounded by family. Family? What family? The only person who should have been there was my son, and the woman who took him from me, Vanessa Carter, my daughter-in-law. Even thinking her name makes my chest tighten. She's one of those women who know how to smile sweetly while cutting you down at the knees. A real charmer in public, smooth words, expensive perfume, the kind of poise that makes you forget to look at what's behind the mask. When Marcus first brought her home, I remember she walked into my kitchen and wrinkled her nose. Said my house smelled like old wood and lavender. I laughed it off then, but the way she looked at me, like I was some old relic she'd have to dust off, it stung. Still, I tried. Lord knows I tried to welcome her. But from the moment they married, things changed. Marcus stopped coming by on Sundays. He used to mow my lawn, fix the light bulbs, sit at my table, and eat cornbread until he couldn't move. After the wedding, it was like he'd been erased and rewritten. Vanessa always had some excuse. Marcus has an early meeting. We're traveling. He's resting. Before I knew it, I was hearing about my own son through Facebook posts. That morning, I was about to head to church when my neighbor, Mrs. Green, came knocking. She's a kind woman, retired teacher, white hair like snow, and always wearing bright lipstick. When I opened the door, her face was pale as paper. "Evelyn," she whispered, clutching her phone. I don't understand. I saw this online. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't true." She handed me her phone, and that's when I saw it. The obituary. My picture. My name. My death date. "Lord have mercy," I muttered. My legs gave out, and Mrs. Green helped me to the couch. "I tried to call Marcus," she said. He didn't answer. "I'm so sorry, honey." I stared at that screen for what felt like hours. My hands trembled so badly, I could barely hold the phone. I scrolled through the comments. Hundreds of people I knew, sending condolences, memories, and prayers. She was such a lovely woman. Marcus must be heartbroken. She's with her husband now. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout that I was alive, that this was a lie. But the longer I looked, the more the words burned into me. It was like being buried alive, but hearing the dirt fall, one shovel at a time. I tried calling Marcus. No answer. I tried again and again. Straight to voicemail. Then I called Vanessa. She picked up after 2 rings. "Vanessa," I said, my voice shaking. "What the hell is going on? Why is there an obituary with my name on it?" There was a pause. Then, in that smooth, sugar-coated tone she always used, she said, "Mrs. Carter? I'm sorry, who is this?" "It's me. Evelyn. Don't play games with me, Vanessa." Another pause. Then a soft chuckle. "You must be mistaken. Mrs. Carter passed away last year." I nearly dropped the phone. "You evil." Before I could finish, the line went dead. She'd hung up on me. I drove straight to Marcus's office that afternoon. It took everything I had to make it downtown. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding. When I got there, the young receptionist gave me a puzzled look. "Can I help you, ma'am? I'm here to see Marcus Carter. I'm his mother." Her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I thought you had passed away." That did it. I felt something inside me snap. I slammed my palm on the counter. "Does it look like I'm dead to you, young lady?" She stammered and ran off to find him. 10 minutes later, she returned, fidgeting nervously. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter, but Mr. Carter isn't available right now." I could see the lie in her eyes. He was avoiding me. My own son. By the time I got home, there was a for sale sign in my yard. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, there it was, sticking out of the grass like a dagger. I called the number on the sign, and a man answered, cheerful and oblivious. "Oh, yes, that's the Carter property. The listing was filed by Vanessa Carter, next of kin. The house should close within the week." It's wonderful to see family managing estates so efficiently after a loss. A loss. I dropped the phone. My knees buckled. I sat right there on the porch, feeling the world tilt. Vanessa had declared me dead. Not just in words, but on paper. She'd filed documents, forged signatures, and taken everything that was mine. My savings, my benefits, even my name. And my son must have believed her. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my recliner, the house dark except for the glow of the lamp. My old dog, Rusty, laid at my feet, sensing something was wrong. I kept whispering to myself, why would they do this to me? What did I ever do to deserve this? I thought about Marcus as a little boy, his first scraped knee, his first bicycle, the nights we ate beans and rice because Harold's paycheck hadn't come through yet. I'd given him everything. And now he'd buried me alive to make his wife happy. My grief hardened into something else, something sharp. I called my friend Clara, an old colleague from my nursing days who now worked for a lawyer's office. When she picked up, I could barely speak. "Clara," I said, voice trembling. "They killed me." She drove over the next morning, eyes blazing when she saw the obituary. "We'll fix this," she said firmly. "We'll make them regret ever thinking you'd stay quiet." That's when I decided. I wasn't going to the police yet. I wasn't calling the papers. No. If Vanessa wanted to pretend I was dead, then I'd let her believe it until the right moment. And when that moment came, I'd make sure the whole world saw me alive. Over the next few days, Clara helped me dig up records. She found forged documents, a fake death certificate filed under my social security number, and even a falsified will. Vanessa had claimed I'd left everything to my loving son and his devoted wife. The audacity made me laugh out loud. Devoted wife, I muttered, more like a vulture in pearls. Everywhere I turned, there were reminders of how deep her lies went. The electric company thought I was deceased. My pension account was frozen. Even my doctor's office had sent my records to storage. It was like the world had erased me, but I refused to disappear. I started going out again, covered up, of course. Big hat, sunglasses, old church scarf. People whispered when they saw me, like I was a ghost. Some crossed the street. Others gasped and said, "Evelyn? But weren't you?" "Yes," I'd reply with a tight smile. "I was." Then one afternoon, Clara came over, waving a piece of paper. "You won't believe this," she said. "Vanessa and Marcus are having a vow renewal ceremony next month. Big event downtown. They're calling it a celebration of love and family." I felt my pulse quicken. "Family," I repeated bitterly. Clara nodded grimly. "And they've planned a special tribute to you. A moment of silence for your memory." That's when it hit me, the perfect moment. If Vanessa wanted the world to mourn me, then I'd give her exactly what she asked for. I'd walk right into that ballroom. I'd let her see her ghost come back to life. And I'd make sure she never forgot what it felt like to be haunted. If you're still with me so far and this story touches your heart or makes your blood boil like mine, go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next part of my story. And please, tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. I'd love to know who's listening out there because this story is just getting started.
Ed.
The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. My body ached from another sleepless night, but my mind was burning hot with one thought: find out how deep this grave goes. I sat by the window, watching the world outside slowly brighten, my tea untouched on the table. There was a strange calm in me, the kind that comes before a storm. For years, I'd lived quietly, helping at church, minding my business, trying not to get in the way.
But now?
Someone had dug a hole for me and written my name on the headstone. They thought I'd lie down in it willingly. They didn't know Evelyn Carter. By 7 o'clock, I was at the county clerk's office, my scarf pulled low over my face. The young clerk at the counter looked up, chewing gum lazily. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I need to see any documents filed under the name Evelyn Carter," I said. He frowned, typed on his computer, and then looked at me with pity. "Ma'am, that file's closed. It says here the person is deceased." I took a slow breath. "And yet here I am," I said sharply, "standing in front of you." His eyes widened. "Wait, you're her? The one that died?" "The one they tried to bury," I corrected. "Now, do you have access to that file or not?" He hesitated, then glanced around before printing something. He slid a few papers across the desk like he was passing contraband. "I could lose my job for this, but this doesn't look right." I looked at the top sheet, a death certificate. My name, my date of birth, the cause of death listed as cardiac arrest in sleep. It even had a doctor's signature. But the signature was scribbled and uneven, the kind of forgery only someone arrogant would think could pass. "Do you know who filed this?"
I asked. He pointed to the bottom line.
"Filed by next of kin, Vanessa Carter." I stared at that name until it blurred. My fingers curled so tight around the paper I thought it might tear. "Thank you," I whispered, voice trembling with fury. Outside, I stood in the sunlight and felt my knees wobble. My own daughter-in-law had signed me off like a broken appliance. When I called Clara and told her, she cursed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "We're going to get her for this, Evelyn. This is fraud, identity theft, everything." "I know," I said softly. "But first, I want to see how far she went." We drove to the bank where my savings had always been kept, a modest account, enough for my old age and a little for Marcus when I passed on for real. The bank manager, a middle-aged man with a tight smile, came to meet us. "I'm sorry, Mrs." He stopped himself, clearly confused. "We were informed of your passing months ago." I placed the forged death certificate on his desk. "And yet, I'm here, alive. Someone's been stealing from me. I want to know who accessed my accounts." He looked nervous. "Well, legally, your estate was transferred to your son and his wife. We have their signatures on the authorization forms." He pulled up the scanned copy on his computer. There it was again, my shaky signature, copied and pasted, like a ghost shadow. Clara leaned forward. "That's forgery. You'll want to make copies of everything and prepare to restore her identity through the SSA and local authorities." He nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "Of course. But Mrs. Carter, this is going to take time." I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "That's all right. I've got nothing but time and a lifetime's worth of patience for revenge." As we walked out, Clara patted my shoulder. "You sure you're up for this? It's a lot for one person." "I spent 30 years cleaning bedpans and stitching wounds," I said. "I can handle a little paperwork and a liar in pearls." The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm of discovery and disbelief. Every time we opened another file, another lie jumped out. Vanessa had changed my mailing address to her condo, rerouted my pension checks, and even listed herself as my caretaker in several documents. She'd built an entire fiction, one where she was the grieving daughter-in-law and I was a memory to be profited from. One afternoon, Clara came by with her laptop open. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "She's been posting about you." I frowned. "Posting? On social media? Look." She turned the screen to me. There was Vanessa, posing at some fancy dinner, writing a caption that said, "Still missing mom every day." She was the glue that held us together. I hope we're making her proud. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments. People saying things like, "You are such a good daughter-in-law," and "She's smiling down on you." I wanted to reach through that screen and shake her. She's using my death to get sympathy. Clara nodded grimly. And attention. But it's also her weakness. Everything she does leaves a trail. That night, I sat alone at my dining table, the papers spread out before me. The forged death certificate, the bank transfers, the posts. My whole life reduced to evidence in a case of betrayal. I picked up an old photo of Marcus as a boy, maybe 6 years old, missing his front tooth and holding a toy truck. My heart ached. I whispered, "What did she do to you, baby? What made you forget who your mama is?" Tears slipped down my cheeks, silent but burning. I wasn't just fighting Vanessa. I was fighting for the boy I raised, the boy who used to hug me every night and promise he'd take care of me when I got old. The next day, Clara and I went to see a lawyer she trusted, a soft-spoken man named Daniel. He looked over everything, eyebrows furrowing deeper by the minute. "This is serious," he said finally. "Your daughter-in-law could be facing multiple charges. But you'll have to verify your identity officially again. Social Security, property registry, everything. And it'll take time." "How long?" I asked. "Months," he said. "Maybe more. But once this hits court, it'll make headlines. This kind of fraud is rare and cruel." "Good," I said. "I want it public. I want her to feel what it's like to have everyone look at you and see nothing but shame." Daniel leaned back, studying me. "You're not just angry," he said softly. "You're planning something." I smiled faintly. "I'm old, Mr. Daniel. I've lived long enough to know revenge tastes best when served with patience." By the end of that week, I knew more than I ever wanted to about Vanessa's schemes. She'd sold my car, pocketed the insurance money from my funeral expenses, and even used my death as an excuse to get Marcus a promotion at work, some sympathy card she'd played with the company about him being emotionally resilient. But the worst part came when Clara told me about the memorial donation fund in my name. Vanessa had collected nearly $15,000 in my honor for local elderly care initiatives. She never donated a cent. It was like discovering new cuts on the same wound every day. That Sunday, I went back to church for the first time since all this started. I wore a wide hat and sat at the back pew. When Pastor James saw me, his mouth fell open. He nearly dropped his Bible. "Evelyn," he whispered. I nodded slightly. "It's me, Pastor." He blinked hard. "But they told us. Your son told us you'd." "I know what they told you," I said quietly. "But as you can see, the Lord ain't done with me yet." A few heads turned. Some people gasped. Others crossed themselves. It must have looked like a resurrection to them. After the service, people came up to me cautiously, as if I might vanish if they blinked too hard. I smiled politely, but my thoughts were elsewhere. Because that's when I overheard one of the deacons say, "It's so nice Marcus is having that vow renewal ceremony to honor her. Such a good son." The words hit me like a slap. "Honor me?" I asked. He nodded cheerfully. "Yes, next month at the Hyatt downtown. They said there'll be a slideshow of your life and a special moment of silence." Beautiful gesture, really. I smiled, though my jaw tightened. "Yes," I said softly. "Beautiful." When I got home, I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the framed family picture on my mantel. Marcus was there, arm around Vanessa, both of them smiling bright for the camera. I remembered that day. It was my birthday. Vanessa had insisted on helping me bake the cake, then made sure to tell everyone she'd done it herself. That was her way, take credit for everything, erase the rest. But this? Pretending I was gone just so she could live free of me?
No.
I wasn't going to let her keep that. That night, I called Clara again. "I'm going to that ceremony." She hesitated. "Are you sure that's wise?" "Wise," I said, laughing softly. "Maybe not, but it'll be worth it." "What are you planning, Evelyn?" "I'm planning to make an entrance." She sighed. "You're serious." "Dead serious," I said, smiling at the irony. Over the next few days, I started preparing in my own quiet way. I bought a new black dress, nothing flashy, just elegant enough to command attention. I polished my late husband's gold locket, the one with our wedding picture inside. Every morning, I'd stand in front of the mirror and whisper, "They think you're gone, but you're not. Not yet." I could almost see Vanessa's face in my mind, all painted up for her big day, basking in the glow of her lies. I pictured her expression freezing as those ballroom doors opened and I stepped inside. The thought alone gave me strength. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my name, my dignity, my life. When people erase you, they think you won't fight back. They count on your silence. But silence is what kills the truth. And I had no intention of going quietly into the grave they dug for me. No, I was going to rise, slow, deliberate, undeniable. And when I did, every lie Vanessa ever told would come crumbling down. By the end of that week, I had gathered everything: my documents, the lawyer's statements, proof of forgery, bank transfers, everything that tied her to the crime. Clara looked at me like she was seeing someone reborn. "You're really doing this," she said. I nodded. "Oh, I'm doing it." And when that priest says, "Let's have a moment of silence for the late Mrs. Evelyn Carter," I'll make sure it's the last moment Vanessa ever spends in peace. I stood tall, cane in one hand, determination in the other. My heart might have been old, but it beat strong, because I wasn't just coming back from the dead. I was coming for everything they took from me. When I woke up that morning, the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like it's hiding something. I used to love peaceful mornings, coffee brewing, the hum of the fridge, sunlight peeking through the kitchen curtains, but not anymore. These days, silence only reminded me that my son, Marcus, barely called, and that I was living like a ghost in the very house I'd once filled with laughter. But that morning, I had a purpose. I had to go into town to pick up my dress from the tailor. It was supposed to be for the wedding, her wedding. My daughter-in-law, Jasmine, the woman who once begged me to teach her how to cook collard greens like a real Southern queen, as she used to say. Now, she didn't even say my name right. Miss Elaine, she'd call me, with that sugary smile. Like I was some old lady she pitied. Not the woman who had raised her husband from nothing, scrubbed floors, and sacrificed years of her life to make sure he could become somebody. When Marcus told me he was marrying Jasmine, I smiled. I even helped pay for part of the engagement party, though I wasn't exactly rolling in money. I told myself, maybe this is my chance to finally have a daughter to talk to, someone who will treat me with respect. But Jasmine had other plans. The first red flag came the day she moved into Marcus's apartment. I'd stopped by to drop off a box of kitchen supplies, real good ones, the kind my mama left me. I found Jasmine there, sitting on the couch with her phone, scrolling through wedding ideas. Marcus wasn't home. "Hi, sweetheart," I said softly. "Just wanted to drop these off for you." She didn't even look up. "Oh, that's okay, Miss Elaine. We don't really do secondhand things." I froze. Secondhand? My mama's cast iron skillet had been in our family for 3 generations. It could outlive both of us. I said nothing, just placed the box on the counter and left quietly. From that day forward, I noticed how she started pulling Marcus away from me, little by little, word by word. One Sunday after church, I called and asked if they were coming over for dinner. Marcus said, "Jasmine's not feeling too well, Ma. Maybe next week." Next week turned into 2 months. Then the rumors started. My neighbor, old Mrs. Watson, mentioned she saw Jasmine at the farmer's market talking about me, how I was getting forgetful, how I sometimes lost track of time. I thought it was just gossip. Until Marcus came over one afternoon looking worried. "Ma, you okay?" he asked. "Jasmine said you left the stove on the last time she visited." I blinked. "What stove? She hasn't been here in months." He looked confused. "She said she dropped by to bring you soup last week." "Marcus, baby, I ain't seen her since Easter." He frowned, rubbing his chin.
Huh.
Maybe she got the days mixed up. But I knew she hadn't. Jasmine was planting seeds, slowly, quietly, making him think I was losing my mind. And it worked. Soon, Marcus started making excuses not to call. He'd say he was busy with work, or that Jasmine's parents wanted to spend more time with them. Then one day, I heard him on the phone telling someone, "Yeah, Mom's getting up there. Might be time to think about assisted living." That one broke me. Still, I tried to hold my head high. I baked pies for church, went to choir practice, smiled at the neighbors like nothing was wrong. But inside, I was drowning in loneliness. Then came the letter. It was a white envelope with gold trimming, dropped off by a delivery man one warm Saturday afternoon. "Congratulations, Jasmine and Marcus," it said in elegant print across the top. The wedding invitation. But my name wasn't on the guest list. I turned the envelope over 3 times, thinking maybe I'd missed it. But it was clear. I wasn't invited. I called Marcus immediately. "Son, I just got this wedding invitation in the mail," I said softly. "But my name ain't on it." There was silence. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Oh, Mom, that's just the formal one for Jasmine's side of the family. We'll send you your invite later." He hung up quickly. Days passed. No invite came. That's when Mrs. Watson called me again. "Elaine, honey," she said gently. "I don't know how to tell you this, but I overheard Jasmine talking at the salon. She told people you passed away last year. Said she was organizing a small memorial before the wedding." I nearly dropped the phone. "What did you just say?" "She said you died, baby. Like, gone." My knees gave out. I had to grab the kitchen counter, just to keep from falling. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there in silence, hearing my heart pound against my chest. Jasmine had taken everything, my son, my dignity, and now she wanted to erase me completely. When I told Marcus what Mrs. Watson said, he laughed nervously. "Ma, come on. That's ridiculous. Jasmine wouldn't say something like that." But his tone was off.
Shaky. Guilty.
I could tell he knew. After that call, I decided I was done being quiet. I called the church where the wedding was supposed to take place and confirmed the date. Then, I called the caterer, pretending to be Jasmine's aunt, and found out exactly where the reception would be. I bought a new dress. Navy blue, simple but elegant. The kind of dress that said, "I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring out at the stars, clutching an old photograph of Marcus as a little boy in his Sunday suit. I remembered how he used to say, "Mama, I'm going to buy you a big house one day, with a porch swing and a garden full of roses." Now I was lucky if he remembered my birthday. Morning came too soon. I took a deep breath, looked in the mirror, and whispered to myself, "Let's see how dead I really am." I showed up at the church early, wearing my best hat and pearls. People gave me funny looks, like they'd seen a ghost. One woman gasped and clutched her chest. I walked past them all with my head high. Inside, the ceremony was just beginning. Jasmine stood at the altar in a white gown that sparkled under the stained glass light. Marcus looked handsome, just like his father used to. When the priest asked for a moment of silence for those who have passed on, I heard Jasmine sniff dramatically, pretending to dab her tears. That was my cue. I stepped through the double doors and into the aisle. The doors creaked loudly, turning every head in the church. The room fell silent. Jasmine turned. Her face drained of color. I smiled and said, "Surprise." Gasps echoed through the church. Someone dropped a program. Marcus's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like a little boy again, scared and guilty. But I didn't waver. I walked slowly down that aisle, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my eyes never leaving Jasmine's. "Seems y'all forgot to tell me about the wedding," I said softly. "Or maybe you just thought the dead don't RSVP." The priest stepped back, stammering. Guests whispered. Cameras flashed. Jasmine just stood there, frozen, her lips trembling. Marcus rushed toward me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I said, my voice steady. "Attending my son's wedding. Is that so strange? Or were you planning to bury me before the reception started?" He looked helplessly at Jasmine. "Jazz, what is she talking about?" Jasmine's mouth opened, but no words came out. I could feel everyone's eyes on her. Every lie she told was unraveling right there under the golden church lights. And for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful.
Alive.
But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The truth hadn't even fully come out yet, and when it did, it would tear everything apart. Because I wasn't just there to crash a wedding. I was there to make them remember who I was, and to make Jasmine pay for every single lie she told. Would you have done the same if someone tried to erase you like that?
Eyes.
If this story hit you in the heart or got you hooked, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next chapter. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? The church was in chaos after I spoke. Some people whispered, some stared, others hurriedly pulled out their phones to record. The air was thick with shock, disbelief, and the sharp sting of shame. Not mine, but theirs. Jasmine stood frozen at the altar, her bouquet trembling in her hands. She looked like someone whose lies had suddenly caught up to her, and there was no more room to hide. Her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal looking for a way out. Marcus still hadn't moved from his spot halfway down the aisle. He kept glancing between me and his bride, trying to piece together what was happening. His voice finally broke through the murmurs. "Mom," he said softly, "what are you doing here?" I tilted my head slightly, feeling every eye in the church watching us. "I came to attend my son's wedding." "That's what mothers do, isn't it?" Jasmine's mouth twitched. "Marcus, please," she's confused. This isn't right. She shouldn't be here." "Confused?" I repeated, taking a few steps closer. "Honey, I might be old, but I'm not senile. And I surely ain't dead, despite what you've been telling people." A gasp rippled through the guests. Someone near the back whispered, "She said her mother-in-law passed last year." The priest looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should take a short break," he murmured, but no one was listening to him. Marcus's brow furrowed. "Jasmine, what's she talking about?" She stammered. "Marcus, she misunderstood something. I never said she was dead. I just..." "Then what's this I heard at the salon?" I cut in sharply. "You told half the women in town I passed away in my sleep. You even mentioned having a memorial for me. Was that just a misunderstanding too?" Jasmine's eyes flickered. "Mrs. Watson, she's lying. She's always been nosy." "Watch your tongue," I said, my voice low but firm. "That woman's been more family to me than you've ever been." The crowd stirred again. Cameras were pointed straight at Jasmine now. Every second of her unraveling was being caught on video. I didn't plan it that way, but the Lord surely worked in mysterious ways. Marcus finally turned to her fully, his jaw tightening. "Jasmine, tell me the truth. Did you say that?" Her hands trembled around her bouquet. "Marcus, please. Your mother was confusing people, and I..." "Confusing people?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean existing? Speaking the truth about how you pushed me out of my own son's life." That shut the whole church up. The choir ladies stopped whispering. Even the priest took a step back. Marcus rubbed his temples. "Okay. Everyone, please, can we just talk outside?" But I didn't move. I wasn't done. "Marcus, before you take her anywhere, I want you to answer me something," I said. "If I hadn't walked through that door today, would you have stood here, smiling, while people believed I was buried in the ground?" He looked down at the floor, speechless. That was my answer. I nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." Then I turned to the guests and said quietly, "Y'all enjoy the wedding. I'll be taking my leave now." I walked out of that church with my head high, the sound of my heels echoing off the marble floors. Behind me, people whispered my name like a ghost story come to life. Outside, the sunlight felt strange on my face. Too bright, too clean after what had just happened. I got into my old blue Chevy and just sat there for a minute, breathing, staring at the reflection of the church doors in my rearview mirror. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My tears had dried up long ago. But deep inside, something hot and heavy was stirring. Not sadness this time, but anger. That girl had tried to bury me alive. And Marcus, my own flesh and blood, had let her. I turned the key and drove off, my hands shaking slightly on the wheel. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every familiar street looked different now, colder, emptier. When I got back, the house felt too quiet again. The ticking clock in the kitchen sounded louder than ever. I hung up my hat, took off my gloves, and went straight to my living room, where my old photo albums were stacked neatly on the shelf. I pulled one down. It was from Marcus's childhood, his first day of school, his high school graduation, his first car. Every picture was full of smiles. I ran my finger over his face and whispered, "What did she do to you, baby? What kind of woman turns a man against his own mother?" I must have sat there for hours, thinking. By the time night fell, my phone started buzzing. Unknown numbers. Probably reporters. Maybe gossipers. I ignored them all. Then one call came through that made my stomach twist. Marcus. I hesitated, then answered. "Ma," he said softly, "can we talk?" "I thought we did plenty of that at the church," I said, my tone flat.
Please.
He sighed. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know Jasmine said those things." "Didn't you?" I asked quietly. Because when people started whispering that I was sick or that I was losing my memory, I told you. "And what did you do?" "You brushed it off." He was silent for a while. "You're right," he finally said. "I didn't believe you. I thought maybe you were being hard on her." "Hard on her?" I let out a small laugh. "Marcus, that girl had me doubting my own sanity. I thought I was losing my mind because you started treating me like I was already gone." He didn't respond. I could hear muffled sounds in the background. Jasmine's voice, sharp and angry. She was yelling at someone.
Probably him.
"I'm sorry, Ma," he said finally. "I should have listened. I should have come by more." "You think sorry can fix that?" My voice cracked. "You think a few words can undo the months I spent thinking I'd lost my son?" He went quiet again. I could tell he wanted to say something, but I didn't let him. "I hope she was worth it," I said coldly and hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept pacing the living room, feeling the weight of years pressing on my shoulders. I thought about everything I'd sacrificed, the double shifts, the missed birthdays, the prayers I said every night for that boy to have a better life. And now, I was the villain in his wife's story. I realized something then. Jasmine didn't just want to erase me from his life. She wanted my story, my place, my role as the heart of this family. And if I taught Marcus anything, it was that you don't let people rewrite your story while you're still breathing. So I made a plan. The next morning, I put on my best coat and drove downtown to see Pastor Reed, the same man who'd baptized Marcus as a baby. I told him everything, the lies, the rumors, the way she'd told people I was dead. He was stunned. "Lord have mercy," he whispered. "That woman needs prayer." "Prayer's one thing," I said, "but she needs exposure, too." He nodded slowly. "You thinking of confronting her?" "I already did," I said. "Now I'm thinking of showing the truth." I spent the next few days digging through every piece of evidence I could find. I still had old voicemails where Jasmine mocked me for being too forgetful to remember birthdays. I had messages where she told Marcus not to worry about visiting the old lady too much. I gathered them all, and then I sent them to her parents, to her friends, to everyone who had believed her story. I didn't care about being polite anymore. I wanted the world to see who she really was. By the end of the week, my phone wouldn't stop ringing again. Only this time, it wasn't gossip. It was people apologizing. People who'd believed Jasmine's lies. And then, finally, Marcus showed up at my door. He looked tired, broken. The boy I once knew flickered behind those tired eyes. "Ma," he said quietly, standing on the porch. "You were right. About everything." I crossed my arms. "What happened?" "She confessed," he said. "She said she made it up because she didn't want to deal with you. She thought you'd embarrass her in front of her family." I stared at him for a long moment. "And you still went through with the wedding?" He hesitated.
No.
I called it off. I blinked. "You what?" "I couldn't do it," he said. "Not after what she did. Not after what I let her do to you." My lips trembled. I wanted to hug him, to forgive him, but my pride held me back. "She took something from us, Marcus," I whispered. "Something we might not get back." "I know," he said, tears in his eyes. "But I'm going to try." I finally let him in. We sat at the same kitchen table where I'd fed him as a boy, 2 cups of coffee between us, the silence softer this time. Outside, the sun began to set, golden light spilling through the window. I realized then that sometimes justice doesn't come from anger or revenge. It comes from standing tall, refusing to let anyone write your ending. Jasmine might have told the world I was dead, but I'd proved one thing beyond a doubt. Elaine Thompson wasn't gone. She was just getting started. The weeks after Marcus called off the wedding were a strange mix of peace and pain. On one hand, I finally had my son back, the same boy who used to run through the house barefoot, chasing the smell of my Sunday pies. But on the other hand, I was left with the ashes of what Jasmine had done. She didn't just spread lies about me. She'd stripped away my reputation, my pride, and my place in the world I'd built. And people might have stopped whispering, but the silence that followed was even louder. Every time I went to church or the market, I could feel eyes following me. Some filled with pity, others with guilt. They'd cross the street to avoid me, as though my presence reminded them of how they'd believed Jasmine's story without question. One afternoon, I ran into one of Jasmine's friends, a young woman named Erica, at the grocery store. She froze when she saw me standing by the apples. Her face went pale. "Mrs. Thompson," she stammered. I just wanted to say I'm so sorry. I didn't know." I cut her off gently. "You didn't want to know, sweetheart. There's a difference." She blinked, her eyes wet. "She told us you were losing your mind. Said you'd wander around the neighborhood calling for Marcus." I swear I thought. People believe what makes them comfortable, I said, picking up a red apple and inspecting it. And believing I was crazy was easier than believing she was cruel.
She didn't know what to say.
I just smiled politely, paid for my groceries, and walked out, leaving her standing there like she'd seen a ghost. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights low, listening to the creak of the house and the faraway hum of cars. My life used to be full of noise. Marcus's laughter, the sound of my late husband, Charles, whistling as he fixed the porch light, even the clatter of dishes on Sunday afternoons. But now it was just me and my thoughts. I thought about how easily people can bury you while you're still breathing. How a lie, once it spreads, feels heavier than truth ever could. And I knew one thing for sure. I might have survived the worst of it, but I wasn't done yet. A week later, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, I found Marcus standing there again, this time holding a folder. "Morning, Ma," he said, looking awkward. "What's that?" I asked, motioning to the folder. He stepped inside and set it on the table. "It's from Jasmine's lawyer." My stomach turned. "She's suing me now?" He shook his head quickly.
No.
"It's not that. She's trying to sue me for emotional distress. She's claiming I humiliated her publicly and caused her to lose her job." I let out a humorless laugh. "After everything she did, she's playing the victim?" He nodded grimly.
"Yeah."
"And her parents are backing her. They're saying I ruined her reputation by calling off the wedding." I sank into my chair and stared at him. "Marcus, you realize she's still not done with us, right? That woman doesn't want peace. She wants revenge." He rubbed his face. "I know, but I'm not letting her drag you through this again." "I'm not scared of her," I said firmly. "She's already tried to kill my name once. I'm still standing." He smiled faintly. "You're stronger than anyone I know, Ma." "Damn right," I said softly. Still, that night I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me tense. I could almost hear Jasmine's voice in the back of my mind, sweet and venomous. "She's confused, Marcus. She's too old to remember things properly." The words played on repeat. The next morning, I drove into town to see Pastor Reed again. When I walked into his office, he looked surprised. "Elaine," he said warmly, "how are you holding up?" I sighed. "I'm still here, Pastor. That's something." He nodded slowly. "Word travels fast. Folks been saying you embarrassed Jasmine at the wedding, but they don't know the whole story. That's just it, I said, sitting down across from him. They never know the whole story. They only know what they're told. And she's still out there twisting things. He folded his hands. What do you plan to do? I looked him dead in the eye. I'm not letting her rewrite my life again. I'm going to tell my story myself.
He blinked.
What do you mean? I said slowly. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. Every word of it. The church, the neighborhood, the whole town if I have to. He hesitated. You sure you want to stir that pot again, Elaine? Folks got short memories but long tongues. I smiled sadly. Then I'll give them something worth remembering. He sighed, then nodded.
All right.
But do it with grace. Don't let anger make you like her. I promised him I wouldn't. But deep down, I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. By the following Sunday, I had my plan. After the morning sermon, Pastor Reed let me speak. The congregation sat in silence as I stood at the pulpit, same one I'd stood beside decades ago when Charles was buried. My voice shook at first, but I steadied myself. Some of you heard that I was dead. I began. Some of you even sent flowers, but as you can see, I'm very much alive. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the pews. I ain't here to point fingers, I continued, but I am here to tell you something. Be careful who you let speak for you. I let someone tell my story for me, and by the time I tried to take it back, I was already 6 feet under in people's minds. You could have heard a pin drop. I was called forgetful,
Confused.
unwell. I was made to doubt my own memories, my own truth. But the devil is a liar, and so is anyone who tries to erase what God keeps alive. When I finished, the room stayed quiet for a long time. Then one person started clapping. Then another. And another. By the time I stepped down from that pulpit, people were crying, hugging me, apologizing. It didn't fix everything, but it was the start of something. That same evening, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was Jasmine. Her voice was cold. You really can't help yourself, can you? Funny, I said calmly. I was about to say the same to you. You embarrassed me, she hissed. You made me look like a liar in front of everyone. You are a liar, I said simply. There was a pause, and I could almost hear her shaking. You think you've won, old woman? You haven't seen what I can do. I've already seen it, I said quietly. You tried to bury me. But the thing about burying someone like me, you better make sure the ground's packed tight, because I'll crawl my way right back out. She hung up. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. But peace doesn't last long in stories like mine. 2 weeks later, I came home from the store and found my front door cracked open. I froze. The hairs on my arms stood up. I pushed the door open slowly and called out, Marcus? No answer. The house was dark. Quiet. Then I saw it, the photo of Marcus and me from his college graduation, lying face down on the floor, glass shattered. Someone had been there. I backed out slowly and called the police. They came within minutes, checked the house, said it looked like a break-in, probably random. But deep down, I knew better. Nothing valuable was taken, just my peace of mind. That night, Marcus stayed with me. He sat on the couch, fists clenched. She wouldn't do something like that, he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Wouldn't she? I asked softly. After everything she's already done? He didn't answer. When he finally left the next morning, I went out to the porch, wrapped in my shawl, and stared at the rising sun. I was tired, but not defeated. I'd spent my whole life fighting, first for a husband who worked himself to death, then for a son who forgot where he came from, and now for my name. But I wasn't done. I decided then that if Jasmine wanted to drag me back into her mess, I'd walk in head high and make her regret every step she took toward me. I called a friend from the local paper, a woman named Loretta, who'd been itching for a story since the whole dead mother-in-law at the wedding mess started trending online. She agreed to meet me the next day. When she came by, she brought a recorder and notepad. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. From the moment Jasmine entered our lives to the lies she spread, to that wedding where I walked in and watched her crumble. By the time I was done, Loretta just sat there shaking her head. That's the kind of story folks don't forget. Good, I said, because neither will I. 2 weeks later, the article came out. The Woman Who Refused to Die, a mother's story of betrayal and resilience. It went everywhere online, on local TV, even picked up by national outlets. People sent letters. Strangers stopped me on the street to hug me. Women told me they'd been through the same, erased, silenced, called crazy when they were only telling the truth. Jasmine's name became a warning. People whispered about her now, not me. She moved out of town soon after. Marcus started coming by more often. Sometimes we'd just sit on the porch, not saying much, drinking coffee as the cicadas hummed. You really came back from the dead, he joked once. I smiled faintly. Maybe I never left. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming everything I'd lost. The world might have believed I was gone once, but now, they'd never forget my name again. Elaine Thompson had risen from her grave, and she wasn't just alive, she was unstoppable. The room went dead silent when I walked in. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor, echoing louder than the priest's last words. All heads turned toward me, the dead woman who had just come back to life. I could feel their eyes, 1,000 gasps hanging in the air like smoke. And right there at the altar, my daughter-in-law froze mid-smile. Her bouquet slipped from her trembling hands, white roses scattering at her feet. I took my time walking down the aisle. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, calm. Too calm for the storm I had walked into. Surprise, I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The priest stepped back, clutching his Bible as though I were a ghost. A few guests whispered, "Is that her? Didn't she die last year? That's Miss Eleanor, ain't it?" "Yes," I said, turning my eyes toward them. "Eleanor Thompson. Alive and well, praise the Lord." Carla, the woman who'd been calling herself my daughter-in-law, staggered back. Her face went pale as milk, her lips trembling so hard she couldn't speak. Behind her, Marcus, my son, looked like he'd seen a ghost. I had imagined this moment so many times, but nothing could prepare me for the way he looked at me, like a man caught between shame and disbelief. "Mom," he breathed out, barely audible. "Mom, you can't be here." "Oh, but I can," I said. "And I should have been here all along." My eyes swept the crowd. I saw church folks I used to bake pies with, neighbors from the old block, and even Carla's friends from her beauty salon, the ones who'd stopped by the house last year with casseroles and sympathy cards. They'd all believed I was gone.
Dead.
Buried. Well, I was done letting anyone bury me before my time. Carla's voice finally cracked through the tension. This is crazy.
She's sick.
She doesn't even know what she's doing." I turned my gaze to her, slow and deliberate. "You said that once before, remember? You told everyone I was too old to remember anything, that I'd wandered off and gotten lost." She flinched. Her mascara started to run. "I remember everything, Carla. I remember the day you brought those documents for me to sign, said it was for my medical insurance, but really it was for my life insurance. I remember the hospital you sent me to when you claimed I had dementia. I remember how you told the doctors I was confused." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus took a hesitant step forward. "Mom, please don't do this here." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Here is exactly where this belongs, Marcus. You stood by while she erased me from my own life, while she took my house, my bank account, and told the whole world I was gone." Carla started sobbing, clutching at her veil. "You don't understand. You don't know what we went through. Marcus, tell her." But Marcus couldn't speak. His jaw tightened, his shoulders slumped. He looked everywhere, but at me. "Tell them, Marcus," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. "Tell them how you let her forge my signature on the insurance claim. Tell them how you took out a policy in my name and how you both cashed it out." Someone gasped near the front row. The priest looked horrified. Carla dropped to her knees, shaking. "She's lying. She's trying to ruin us. She doesn't even know what she's saying." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying," I replied. And I brought proof. I pulled a folded packet from my purse. Photocopies, notarized, every signature, every forged line. The insurance payout, the fake death certificate, the bank withdrawals. I'd been quiet too long, pretending I didn't know what they were doing. But a woman like me doesn't survive 70 years just to die quietly in the corner. This, I said, holding it up, is what you did. A murmur rose among the guests. Phones came out, whispers spread like wildfire. Carla's sister was already live-streaming the entire scene on Facebook. Marcus stepped down from the altar, his hands trembling. Mom, we can talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about, I said. You and your wife buried me. You took my home, my savings, and my dignity. But you forgot one thing. Dead people don't walk into weddings. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should, take a moment to pray. Don't you dare, I snapped. You prayed over my so-called memorial last year. You stood there and blessed a lie. He dropped his gaze. Carla sobbed harder, her makeup streaking down her cheeks. You don't know what it's like. We were drowning in debt. We had to do something. You could have asked me, I said. You didn't have to kill me off on paper. I turned to the crowd again, scanning their faces, some pitying, some stunned, some ashamed. I was there when Marcus was born. I raised him when his father left. I worked 2 jobs, cleaned other people's houses, and sold sweet potato pies just to keep a roof over our heads. And this, I gestured toward the decorated hall, the gleaming chandeliers, the white tablecloths. This is how they repay me. The silence that followed was heavy. Carla's sobs turned into hiccups. Marcus stood there, frozen, unable to defend himself. Then, suddenly, Carla screamed. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You ruined everything. You were supposed to stay gone. Security rushed in, but I held my ground. I looked her square in the face. You should have made sure the coffin was nailed shut, sweetheart. That was when the guests erupted, some yelling, some rushing to leave. The priest dropped his Bible. Cameras flashed. It was chaos. Marcus finally found his voice. Enough, he shouted. Stop it. Everyone just stop. The room fell quiet again. His voice cracked as he turned toward me. Mom, I made mistakes, okay? I was desperate. Carla said it was the only way. I didn't think it'd go this far. I stared at him. You didn't think? You watched them lower an empty coffin into the ground, Marcus. You let them put my name on a tombstone. He covered his face with his hands. I didn't know how to fix it. You fix it by telling the truth, I said softly. Right here, right now. The air felt thick enough to choke on.
For a long moment, he said nothing.
Then he looked up, tears streaming down his cheeks. She's right, he said. We lied. We told everyone she died. We needed the insurance money. I thought, his voice broke. I thought she wouldn't make it much longer anyway. The room gasped again. Carla screamed, Marcus, and tried to slap him, but security held her back. He dropped to his knees in front of me, sobbing like a child. I'm sorry, Mom. I swear I'm sorry. I'll fix it. I'll give it all back. I looked down at him, and for a moment I saw my little boy again, the one who used to climb into my lap after scraping his knees, the one who'd promised he'd take care of me when I got old. I wanted to forgive him. I wanted to believe he still had a heart somewhere under all that guilt. But some wounds go too deep. Some things you can't fix with money, I said quietly. I turned to leave, but the crowd parted before me like the Red Sea. People whispered my name as I walked past. Miss Eleanor. She's alive. Lord have mercy. Outside, the sun was just beginning to set. The sky burned orange, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I stood by the steps of the church, looking out at the world that had forgotten me, and I smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile born of joy, it was the kind born of justice. Behind me, I could still hear the chaos inside. The yelling, the crying, the disbelief. Let them talk. Let the world see what greed and lies could do to a family. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting. Sometimes it's just showing up, alive, strong, and unbroken, when they thought they'd buried you for good. And as the first cool breeze brushed my face, I whispered to myself, I may have been gone, but I was never finished. When I reached the car waiting for me, a kind neighbor had driven me there. I looked back one last time at the building that held every memory, every betrayal. I took a deep breath. It's over, I said aloud, though a part of me knew it wasn't. Not completely. The truth would still come out in the papers, in the news, in the courtroom. But the hardest part was done. I had walked into my own funeral and lived to tell it. And that, I thought, was a miracle in itself. As we drove away, I let my hand rest on the window, the city lights blurring past. My heart was heavy, but steady. I had lost everything. My son, my home, my peace. But I'd reclaimed my name. And sometimes that's enough. If this story touched your heart or kept you on edge till the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another story like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what moment shocked you the most. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Red Heart,